The single most impactful concept you must grasp to change your financial destiny is this: the rich do not work for money. They have money work for them. This shift in perspective is a cornerstone of breaking free from the rat race, that exhausted cycle of working harder only to find yourself deeper in debt and more heavily taxed. Most of us are conditioned to believe that a good job is the ultimate destination, a safe harbor in an uncertain world. In reality, a high salary often becomes nothing more than a more comfortable cage if you do not understand the mechanics of wealth. This idea remains hidden behind the traditional academic path because our school systems were designed during the agrarian and industrial ages to produce employees, not employers. We are taught to be doctors, lawyers, and accountants, highly skilled professionals who spend years mastering scholastic skills, yet leave the classroom financially illiterate, unable to distinguish between what builds wealth and what merely drains it. In our formative years, we often don't realize where we stand in the social hierarchy until a specific moment of comparison shatters our innocence. For a child, social standing isn't about bank statements or portfolio diversity. It is about the things your peers have that you do not. The shiny bicycles, the new baseball gloves, and the invitations to exclusive worlds that seem to exist just beyond your reach. This childhood social comparison leaves a deep psychological imprint, a quiet, gnawing anxiety that we are less than because our parents don't live on the right side of the street. It is the moment the world divides itself into the haves and the have-nots, and you realize you're standing on the wrong side of the line. I remember the year was 1956. I was 9 years old, and I attended a public school where, by a twist of fate in the school district lines, the wealthy plantation owners, doctors, and bankers sent their children. One morning, I stood on the curb and watched as Jimmy's mom drove up in their brand new, shimmering Cadillac. They were heading to their beach house for the weekend, a place of sun and salt and ease. Jimmy took 3 of his friends along, and as the car pulled away, Mike and I were left standing in the dust. When I asked why we weren't invited, the answer was a cold, sharp blade. We were the poor kids. That hurt was a gift, though it felt like a bruise on my soul at the time. It was a spark that forced me to ask my father, a man of immense intellect, how to get rich. Have you ever felt that same sting? That quiet moment where you realize that despite working hard, you were still on the outside looking in? My father, whom I call my poor dad, was a brilliant man. He held a PhD and had completed 4 years of undergraduate work in just 2. He attended Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University on full scholarships. He was the head of the Hawaii State Department of Education. Yet, despite this elite pedigree, his eyes simply went back to the newspaper when I asked my question. He told me to use my head, but he didn't have the map. He was a master of a system that produced employees, and his academic brilliance was a different language entirely from the language of money. There is a tragic, sincere misguidance in the path of the poor dad. He was a man of integrity who advocated for the path of safety. Study hard, get a safe job with a big company. He believed in the company and the government taking care of you, obsessed with pay raises, retirement plans, and medical benefits. But this advice, born of a deep love and a desire for my safety, creates a financial nightmare. Even with his high salary and his prestigious titles, he struggled his entire life, eventually leaving behind bills to be paid rather than a legacy of wealth. He viewed our home as his greatest asset, not realizing it was a liability that drained his income through taxes, interest, and maintenance. Contrast this with my rich dad, Mike's father, who never finished the 8th grade, but became one of the wealthiest men in the islands. The fundamental difference lay in their response to financial challenge. My poor dad would say, "I can't afford it," a statement that effectively puts the brain to sleep. My rich dad forbade those words. Instead, he insisted on the question, how can I afford it? One is a dead end. The other is an exercise of the mind, the most powerful computer in the world. By asking how, you force your brain to seek opportunities and grow stronger. One dad grew weaker financially by letting his brain atrophy in the face of bills. The other grew stronger by exercising it every day. This difference was proven to me through a childhood experiment. Mike and I, desperate to make money, began collecting used toothpaste tubes from neighbors. In those days, the tubes were made of lead. We spent weeks stockpiling them next to my mother's washing machine until she threatened us with eviction. On a Saturday morning, my dad drove up to see two 9-year-olds running a production line. The hibachi grill was glowing with red-hot coals. We were melting the lead tubes in a steel pot, the smell of burning paint and molten metal filling the air. We poured the liquid lead into plaster of Paris molds we had cast in milk cartons. Fine white powder was everywhere, coating our skin and clothes like a snowstorm. When I tapped the mold open with a hammer, a lead nickel fell out. My dad's friend burst into laughter, but my dad had to gently explain the word counterfeiting. Our business was over on opening day. My poor dad was proud of our creativity, but he admitted he couldn't help us. He suggested I talk to Mike's dad. That was a realization. If I want to be rich, I had to stop asking the person with the PhD and start asking the person who understood how money actually flows. To escape the rat race, you must understand the strategic importance of cash flow over net worth. Net worth is a deceptive figure, often comprised of expensive junk and opinions. Real wealth is measured by how many days you could survive if you stop working today. Most people are trapped because they do not know the difference between an asset and a liability. To the rich dad, the definition was simple. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out of your pocket. I learned this through the grueling 10-cent an hour lesson. Mike and I worked for his father, dusting canned goods in a hot, airless grocery store for 3 hours every Saturday. Every time a car drove by, more dust settled on the cans. The pay was a measly 30 cents. It was boring, it was hot, and it felt like slavery. When I finally confronted Rich Dad, he didn't apologize. He told me that life was simply pushing me around. Most people spend their lives being pushed, reacting with the gnawing fear of not being able to pay their bills and the greed for the things a paycheck can buy. They get up, go to work, and pay bills in a never-ending cycle. They are chasing a carrot dangled by a master who is going where he wants to go, while they are merely chasing an illusion. The trap is reinforced by the three masters. First, you work for the company to make the owner and shareholders rich. Second, you work for the government. Most people work from January to May just to pay their taxes. The government takes its share before you even see your paycheck. Third, you work for the bank to pay off the mortgage on a home you mistakenly call an asset, while you work harder to pay for that bigger house. You are actually feeding a liability. The solution isn't more money, which usually leads to bracket creep, where the government just takes a larger percentage, but a fundamental shift in how you see the work itself. The turning point occurs when you stop being an employee of the ladder and start becoming the owner of the ladder. This requires a psychological shift where you see money as an agreement or an illusion rather than a tangible reality. Rich Dad didn't teach us through lectures. He taught us by taking away our 10-cent pay entirely. He made us work for free. By not having a paycheck to rely on, we were forced to use our brains to find ways to create money. We had to move beyond the knee-jerk reaction of, I need a job. We had to look in the mirror and confront our own fears and desires. This power of the mirror, self-knowledge, is the most treasured of the Japanese powers, far outweighing the power of the sword, force, or the power of the jewel, the possession of money. Facing the truth of your own fear is the only way to master it. This illumination leads to the realization that you must mind your own business. Your profession might be a teacher or a salesman, but your business should be your asset column. When I worked for Xerox selling copiers, I was a top 5 salesman, but I wasn't working just for the commissions. I was working to buy real estate. Every commission I earned didn't go toward a new car or a bigger house. It went into my asset column. I was building a team of employees. Each dollar I earned, that worked for me 24 hours a day. Eventually, the cash flow from my real estate was so strong that my assets bought me a Porsche. I didn't buy that luxury with my sweat. My assets bought it for me. This is the difference between the rich and the middle class. The rich buy luxuries last, while the poor and middle class buy them first to look rich, only to end up deeper in debt. Minding your own business also means protecting your assets through the corporate shield. A corporation is not a building or a factory. It is merely a file folder with some legal documents sitting in an attorney's office. It is a legal body without a soul that allows the rich to pay expenses with pre-tax dollars, while an employee earns, gets taxed, and tries to live on what is left. A corporate owner earns, spends on business expenses, like board meetings in Hawaii, car expenses, and insurance, and is only taxed on what remains. It is the ultimate Robin Hood defense. Most people believe taxes punish the rich, but the rich use their financial IQ to find legal loopholes, while the middle class is left to pay for the social programs they voted for. To achieve this level of freedom, you must develop the 4 pillars of financial IQ. First is accounting, the ability to read and understand financial statements. Second is investing, the science of making money. Third is understanding markets, the science of supply and demand. And fourth is the law, understanding the tax advantages and protections of corporations. I used these pillars during my time at Xerox. I utilized Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code, which allowed me to trade up my real estate holdings. By selling a smaller property and exchanging it for a more expensive one, I was able to delay paying taxes on my gains, allowing my wealth to compound at an incredible rate. People who are afraid of the government or ignorant of the law miss these opportunities to build their asset columns with the government's blessing. A practical model of this was the comic book library Mike and I started as kids. After working for free at the grocery store, we noticed the distributor cutting the covers off old comic books to get credit. We asked if we could keep the discarded books. We set up a library in Mike's basement, charging neighborhood kids 10 cents admission for 2 hours of reading. We hired Mike's younger sister, who loved to study, to be our head librarian for $1 a week. Our business averaged $9.50 a week in income. Even when we were at school or playing, our business was making money. We had created an asset that worked without our physical presence. We weren't working for money. Our business was. Choosing prioritized financial education over temporary security is the road less traveled. It is a path that requires you to ignore the traditional advice of playing it safe and instead embrace the challenge of self-reliance. My poor dad's path was the one most people take, a life of hard work, high taxes, and the constant gnawing fear of losing what little they have. My rich dad's path was a pursuit of wisdom over a paycheck. I often reflect on the Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. 2 roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad was a painful, gut-wrenching decision. He was a good man, and his advice came from a place of love, but I could see that his map led to a destination I didn't want to reach. I chose the road of financial literacy, and it led me to retire at 47, wealthy and free. Remember, there's a profound difference between being broke and being poor. Broke is temporary. It is a financial state that can be remedied with a new idea or a bold move. But poor is eternal. It is a state of mind, a choice to stop learning and to remain a slave to your fears and desires. The choice to be wealthy doesn't start with a lucky break or a lottery win. It starts with a choice to learn, to look in the mirror, and to stop working for money so that you can finally have money work for you. The road is open, and the choice to start minding your own business is yours to make. The only question is, which road will you take?